All right, we're live. Not everybody's here. Shocking. But we do have a good start to a panel with John. Is it Robine or Robine or Robin?
Robine.
Robine. John Robine for the first time. Well, welcome to the show. Happy to see you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Kurt from Uncivil Law. How's it going, man?
I'm grooving, baby.
You're grooving. All right. And then Steve is back from Southern Law.
Awake and fully alert.
And enthusiastic. So,
yes. I'm mad about something. I'm sure I will figure it out.
Okay. Well, you know what? We were talking before everybody came on and going over part of what we were covering last week. Steve, I guess, read the SAG guidelines for guns and shooting on sets. And I'd almost like to revisit that because there's a little bit of Alec Baldwin news going on right now. Explicitly, he is not attending the preliminary hearing that is starting, was it May 3rd, I believe. And I think I know why. Actually, no, I absolutely know why he's not attending the May 3rd preliminary hearing. It's a little bit of a touch of irony. But the filming for Rust, yes, Rust, the movie, where he shot Helena Hutchins, who perished, which is being directed by a Joel Souza, who also was shot but didn't perish, will be filming while the trial is going on. I have 3 lawyers. Have you ever heard of somebody who is being tried for something that occurred on something and is doing that same thing while the trial's going on? Help me out.
Yes, but in very limited context. My background, some of it is medical malpractice. So yes, you're not going to stop a surgeon from continuing performing surgeries just because there happens to be a case going on. But
if it was the same patient, that would be very weird.
No, that would be very weird. But in this case, patient's dead. So it would be very difficult to perform a surgery on a dead patient. I guess it actually would be very easy, but...
Oh, well, we got the right knee this time.
But you see the point that I'm making is that you don't necessarily take somebody out of their profession and continue to operate just because there is the liability suit.
In addition to being a world-class surgeon, I also happen to be the coroner, so I got that covered for me, live or dead, either way.
So there is some degree of precedence that you don't necessarily stop the production just because there is a lawsuit pending.
Look at this, Kurt. You brought your fan club here with you.
Nice.
All right.
Anyway, okay. How about the other two? I mean, don't you find it odd that it's the same damn movie? He's under charges and he's acting in the same damn movie. That just seems weird to me.
If he's doing day shifts in court and night shifts on the set, I have many questions.
Well, he's skipping court to continue filming.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, depends how long filming is going on relative to the whole proceedings, but yeah. I mean, I wouldn't blame him for being absent from the preliminaries in any event, to be honest, because it's just another attempt for, the media to get a shot of him. And there's no particular reason for him to be there for the preliminaries, to be honest. So, if I were a criminal defendant, I'd probably want to be there, but I totally understand for him not being there.
Okay, that's fair. I've heard that preliminary hearings that a lot of times, and I could be wrong, the defense will just say, okay, defense rests, because they don't want to share or reveal any kind of defense or evidence or anything else. Steve, am I off base or what do you?
No, I mean, I don't think so, unless you wanted to probe the prosecution. And they're not getting the case dismissed at this point. I think it's already been, the bad part of it that was legally deficient, I think, has already been dropped. So they're down to the basic you were criminally negligent sort of thing. So he's not getting rid of that at this phase, I don't think, whether he shows up or not.
Well, I think you undersold it a little bit. He got the bad part thrown out. He got the special prosecutor thrown out. At the rate he's going, it's going to be a parking ticket.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit more of a circus than it. And I'm not a fan of his politically. Acting wise, I think he's talented, but I don't like the guy. But he's entitled to the same due process everybody else is, and they were making a little bit of a circus out of it, I think.
Now, I don't know if any of you read whether Hannah Gutierrez Reed is going to show up or not for hers, or if that's going on.
I don't know
the information.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to find out about that. And it's by the way, another little weird factoid about it is there has been one conviction on the case so far, and that's Dave Halls, the first assistant director, who copped a plea. Would it not be ironic if he's the only one who actually gets convicted? Because I feel like Hannah Reed and her lawyer are smart enough to just shut up and hang back, because everything that happens with Baldwin is happening with her as well. You know, the worst charge has already been dropped. The most she's going to face is 18 months. I mean, literally, that is the max, I believe, in New Mexico that she can face on the charge, period. And it seems to be going pretty well. Feel free to jump in.
Well, what I did was prep this, because the last time when we argued over it, I went back and read the Safety Bulletin 1, which is, at least as far as Baldwin goes, was the alleged kind of, hey, he was following industry guidelines. How could he be so negligent if he was doing what he was supposed to do? And I think you made the point then that the guidelines don't require him to be the guy checking the firearm, and the public releases of the Actors Guild, they support your position. So I went back and read it. I've got it pulled up. Now, if I'm on the state side of it, I found two things that are an issue. One of them, I think John already brought up before we came on, which makes sense, which is an industry guideline doesn't get you off the hook if you're violating state criminal law. It doesn't supersede that. But the first
basically enough, right?
Yeah. So first paragraph says and this would apply to Baldwin, refrain from pointing a firearm at anyone, including yourself. If you have to do it, have the property master remember that any object at which you point a firearm could be destroyed. So he obviously pointed the gun at a person, because that's how he shot him. It didn't go through a wall or anything like that. So he violated the paragraph 1 here on, I think it's page 2. And then paragraph 14 says, hey, nothing in here is meant to supersede more strict state guidelines and things. So if you've got a standard of conduct in the state, this doesn't get you off the hook. It is helpful to him that it's not worse for him that he had an obligation under industry guidelines to check the gun. I agree with Eric on that. That would be worse for him, but I don't think this, in my opinion, back then when we were yelling about it a little bit, it didn't get him off the hook, and I still feel like that's the case. So that's my opinion, is he's got an issue there because he pointed the gun at somebody, and whether he pulled the trigger after he cocked the gun or the gun malfunctioned, he still had to cock it for it to drop down and fire at her. He caused the firearm to go off through the actions he took. It didn't just happen.
True, but I'm saying that it's causing confusion. And then you mentioned the state guidelines, because remember, these guidelines, there's state controls as well, because they're licensed by the state. You have a state film board. The state film board brings those guidelines on. So now how much of the state endorsement, et cetera, is going to come into play? And again, I personally think that he screwed up, obviously, but I'm looking from an obvious perspective. I do feel like all these things do cause confusion for the situation. I could be wrong, but what is the jury supposed to think? And we don't even know if the prosecutors are going to stay on board at all, or how that's going to go. We've got the preliminary hearing, because to Alec's legal team credit, not only did they go after the prosecutor, he said, oh yeah, and we want a speedy trial.
Yeah. I think a lot of these factors are factors in mitigation rather than factors in liability. Like I think to be fair to Baldwin, it is not wholly unreasonable for him to at least partially depend on other people. So even if Baldwin had a responsibility, I think that there's a case to be made that, like, look, the reason we hire these safety people in the first place is, to double and triple check things and to make sure that things are safe for us, because, we're not experts in safety in any domain. We're not experts in workplace safety in any respect. So we don't know anything about how to build a set or when a balcony is safe to stand on, or when this thing will break away. If you gave me this cup, then it's really a breakaway cup instead of a regular cup. You know, so actors trust prop masters all the time for these kinds of things. And it's like, to what degree do they really have to double check everything? Now, you could make a credible argument that a firearm is at least partially different, because a firearm is by its nature an inherently dangerous object, where some of these other things are perhaps not. But I think to say that, you know, that he was looking to other people who have experience and training and competence in this domain to not give him a loaded firearm, and that, you know, wasn't necessarily easy for him to check this particular kind of firearm in terms of loading it and unloading it. You know, the way that these firearms are loaded, they're, you know, the cylinder doesn't pop out. You know, you have to load each round one at a time in a cylinder, and so it's hard to check it, as opposed to a modern revolver where the entire cylinder pops out and it's a little bit easier. So, you know, there's a lot of factors in mitigation. So I think reasonably, even if he's convicted, I think we're looking at no time. I don't think we're looking, you know, we're looking at some sort of suspended sentence. So I think that's sort of what I think about the whole thing. You know,
Joe,
it's at least a superficially understandable situation.
Okay, Joe, on that note, do you think the fact that Dave Halls already took a plea may help him too in terms of mitigation, that his defense could be, look, the guy didn't check the gun. He admitted he didn't check the gun. I was depending on the safety officer on the set to check the gun. Look, he already pled guilty. You've got the guilty party. Leave my client alone. Do you think there's anything there?
Do I think that'll enhance his defense, is what you're asking me?
Yes.
I mean, we all know that happened, right? I mean, we all know. I don't think there's much dispute about, in general, what facts happened, other than like his silly claim that he didn't pull the trigger. We all know that the gun was handed to him by somebody. Clearly, the gun was not properly checked for a live bullet. We also know he didn't check for a live bullet. The fact that that's now been pled to, I mean, the facts play out themselves, that we know that that's what happened. No one's disputing the fact. No one thinks that he went over, picked up the bullet, and loaded it in there himself. So the fact that someone is pleading to the fact that they are the ones who loaded the live round in there, I don't know how much that actually changes anything for him. But I happen to agree with Uncivil's assessment that I think that there's a really good chance here we'll see a conviction, but such a low level conviction that he'll just be given like community service, or, you know, no real time. And I think the bloodlust for conviction is obviously going to be higher because it's Alec Baldwin. I think that a lot of people want to see him punished, almost like knock a peg down on the elites. And I'm part of that group, which really I dislike the guy. I'm trying to be mindful of that and say, like, okay, like if it wasn't Alec Baldwin, but it was Alec Slobotnik, would I really, you know, be screaming for justice that no, this guy has to spend 8 years in jail or whatever? I mean, the law is what the law is. We can not like the law, but we have to work with the law as it was at the time that this woman was killed.
It's like Bill Cosby, right? I mean, in that regard. Not everybody thinks Bill Cosby, you know, did it, should be prosecuted, but they made serious, grave errors on his case, and therefore he came out ahead. Would that be a fair analogy?
No, but I don't love that analogy, frankly, because I think Bill Cosby was a douchebag to each and every one of these women. Like, in other words, in each moment, that Alec Baldwin here was arrogant, clumsy, sloppy jerk, who was one of several factors in leading to Helena Hutchins dying, right? I mean, it could have been stopped along the way. If a couple of things along the way that could have stopped him. He was one step there. I think Bill Cosby was so, yes, we all want to see justice and innocent until proven guilty. And in the case with Bill Cosby, so there were deals that were negotiated with the DA, which the DA completely screwed him over and cheated him out of the deals that he had made. But at the same time, I think the bloodlust, at least in that circumstances, this is a guy who knew what he was doing and was destroying women because he was using his power as Bill Cosby to basically bait these women who presumably otherwise would have.
I'm speaking in terms of applying the law and being
Oh, in that sense,
fair.
yes. In that sense,
that's it. No, I'm not analogizing them as people individually. Joking. Good God.
I don't know where you're coming from.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Well, John, by the way, on that note, because one thing that did come up with is not pulling the trigger. Ironically, I feel like that could have helped him because of his claims. The FBI tested that theory and in effect destroyed the gun in its current state. Yes, it can be repaired. I'm not going to get into that. But now they cannot repeat the procedure and prove him wrong. And the defense may be able to get some of the gun evidence thrown out, I would think. But what are your thoughts on that? Was it another unforced error from the prosecution?
Yes, and I think that there were, look, over the course of the last several cases that I've seen, even though my guess has historically been for not guilty, I have been wrong. But I've seen numerous unforced errors, and this is a fantastic example of one where, as a fundamental premise of fairness, both sides should be able to have their independent experts test the weapon to see whether it was actually defective or not. And the fact that they destroyed the weapon after they were the only ones that actually tested it is absolutely a problem. And I'm a little bit loath to go to the point that it's pure Brady, but we're getting very, very much in that realm where if you don't have the ability to independently test the mechanism of a claim, then it's not fair for the state to present their analysis of the piece of evidence and not provide the defense to, at the very least, examine it in a similar fashion.
I understand what you're saying there, John, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit because I mean, the term destroyed implies that there was an intentional act by the government to destroy this weapon. It's like, okay, we got our hands on it. Now we're going to try and keep it from the defense by destroying it, which is not at all, it's not at all descriptive of what happened. And I know you didn't mean that. That's the term that the defense, defense is choosing to use that intentionally because it's technically accurate.
What I'm saying is, from a legal perspective, I don't need them to have any sort of intent to destroy it. The fact that it is destroyed and I cannot examine it means that it should be out.
Okay. Yeah, I also want to push back on what we mean by destroyed because the gun itself is still present. It's the firing mechanism within the gun that was driven to the point of failure. And so the gun no longer operates the way it did. Now,
right, but so therefore, no, that to me, because in its state, like I said, I did qualify. I said it can be repaired. Absolutely. Yeah. But the gun, like 100% of the gun that Seth Kinney and his group gave to the set cannot be operated in the state it is in because the prosecution's experts, who happen to be the FBI, damaged it to such a degree. Now, you could go repair it and say, look, it doesn't happen, but now it's not the same gun. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that's true, but by the same token, destructive tests are not unknown to law in general. There are certain tests where you do tests on blood, for example, where to run the test destroys the blood, so no further tests can be done on it. And sometimes you have enough blood in enough samples where there is some left, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes, it's a one and done kind of thing. So if the nature of the test that is done is such that the sample will be destroyed, then what is critical is the nature of the protocol that's being done that can be evaluated. But if this is standard protocol that the FBI did this in this kind of test, and this is just the standard protocol that's done, then I don't think it represents any sort of Brady or discovery violation.
And that's why I said that I think that we're getting close to the line and we're not quite there. But I do have concerns with the idea that the state can conduct significant testing on a piece of physical evidence such that the defense has no ability to have an independent examiner come and try and examine it themselves.
And somehow I don't think that's a normal course of tests. Ironically, because Alec Baldwin is flapping his mouth, I think is the only reason they went to that degree. I don't know FBI, procedure on testing guns, but I don't think they usually hit hammers, hammers with hammers, kind of meta, to see if the gun will fire itself. That doesn't seem logical to me. But Steve, you're very, very deep into firearms and things like that. Have you ever heard of that kind of test being done normally?
I don't know what they actually did to test here. It's possible that something broke just by dropping the hammer. People get worried about that. And if this was some kind of cheap reproduction or whatever, it could have just happened while they were operating the gun. So if they were beating it with a hammer, that would be unusual. And to my mind, not even relevant to what he claimed happened. I guess one of my issues with this is the pulling of the trigger really the crux of what makes him potentially have criminal liability here, because the guidelines say don't point the gun at anyone else. Anything you point the gun at can be destroyed. And whether he pulled the trigger or not, he cocked the gun while it was pointed at somebody. So does he get off just because in theory then he lets go with a hammer while it's still pointed at this woman? This is not a semi-automatic gun. This is one you have to cock yourself in order to fire it, whether the trigger gets pulled or whether it's broken. He did all of that while it was pointed at her, kept it pointed at her long enough for all of that chain of events to occur to kill her with the gun. And if he'd had the gun moved in 6 inches either way and not pointed it at her, as the guidelines said don't do, he wouldn't be in the boat that he's in right now. They just all would have covered it up and gone out drinking.
Nick, you're the arbiter.
Technically, he said it was 6 inches, but it was only about 3.
Yeah. Metric defense.
Ouch.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
That's
Hey,
good.
man, how you doing?
Thank you for deigning us with your presence.
Oh my gosh, I would have been here earlier, except for the problem of sleeping a little too long this morning. So my apologies. But I wanted to pop in for a little bit because I love this show. I really do, and I get to hang out with people I haven't gotten to before, which is Southern Law. How's it going, man?
All right, Nick, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Pretty good. We're talking about Alec Baldwin.
Yeah,
We are.
Oh, you didn't say hi to me?
Well,
Thanks,
I've been on stream with you before, John. Just one time, but not with Mr. Southern Law. What's your Southern Law name? I heard it just a second ago, but
Steve.
Steve.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Why are we still talking about Alec Baldwin? Isn't he dead yet?
Not yet, but he had here's what spawned it all off. He's not attending his preliminary hearing. The reason he's not attending his preliminary hearing is because, he'll be busy filming Rust.
Oh, yeah, that's very
at the
important.
time.
Yeah.
So, you've got to make sure you resume filming the movie where you killed somebody. And I brought that up.
Judge,
It's a little ironic.
I cannot be at these hearings, Judge. I have something very important to do. I don't know. This whole mess has really interrupted my life.
I have to finish that film where I killed somebody on the set.
No, but it's not rare that defendants are excused from
No.
hearings, though. So
Yeah,
everybody thinks like this is so bad, but
If he's on,
But it would be like, well, let me finish robbing the bank.
it's kind of in bad
No, I don't think
taste.
so.
It's kind of in bad taste. Personally, my opinion, but I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with it. If he's out on his own recognizance or if he's out on release conditions, and there's no particular flight risk, and there's nothing that he needs to be a witness for. I think a lot of preliminary hearings in criminal cases, it's always funny when I would get first-time criminal clients and you go to the first appearance and they're like, oh, what are we going to do? It's like, well, we're going to plead not. They're going to ask if you want to read the charges out loud. And you're going to say no, because that's terrible. And you have them on a piece of paper. And then we're going to plead not guilty. And then they're going to schedule your next hearing, which is the second appearance. And then they're like, okay, well, what happens at the second appearance? Like, well, we're going to go in and they're going to ask if you want to read the charges out loud, which we're going to say no, because it's terrible. And you've got a piece of paper. And then we're going to plead not guilty again. And then they're going to schedule your next hearing. Like, well, what's that one? It's like, well, that's the one where we do a bunch of research and we try to get the case dismissed pre-trial. But these first two hearings are literally nothing happens and then nothing happens again in the exact same way. Well, why do they do two? Because someone wrote a rule.
But usually for those MTDs, they don't, like I've done the MTDs that I've done, the motion to dismisses. Usually it's just me and the other attorney, the persons, because they usually they'll usually say, can my client be excused?
What is
So we're just talking
MTD?
about
Motion
this.
Motion to
to
dismiss.
dismiss.
Motion
Yeah.
to dismiss.
Yeah, we now
Notice how all
sometimes
lawyers said it at the exact same time.
Go ahead, Nate. But I'm the non-lawyer, so I have to ask these questions.
well, I've had them where my client needs to be there and I've had them where my client needed to be there and where I called witnesses from the state as well. But those were kind of rare. I mean, we were attacking some pretty specific things that the state had done during my client's pretrial detention. So it was, that's those instances. But I agree. Most of the time they don't need to be there. It's very much just a paper argument. The judge may want to hear a little bit of oral argument to clear it up. But everything's already in the documents. I mean, and you put all your effort into that. So I don't see a huge problem with it, other than I think for someone whose entire job is based on his personal reputation and his personal appearance, I think he should appear at those things. I think he should appear to have some sympathy for this person. And how much time out of his day is it really going to take to go do this hearing that's going to interrupt his very important appearance on the set of Rust? It's like, can't they do anything else for that 2-hour window of time?
Could be.
It's
By
in
the way,
same county. I mean, it can't be that far away.
No. He's filming in Montana. Nice.
Wait,
one.
okay.
Yeah.
So
They're not using the same set. They're not using the same place.
No, not because remember the production team's already been fined by the state at the highest amount, like $160,000. But yes, they were going outside the state. They're also not using the same armor. That would be really interesting. It's bad enough that Alec Baldwin's there, but why not have Hannah there too, huh?
Oh, that'd be good stuff.
I mean, well, wouldn't it be technically the same thing? Yeah.
I mean, kind of. It's a weird position to be in because you either have to like hire her back and try and pretend like she did nothing wrong, or you don't and you try and. But you also have to pretend like, well, it's not because someone died, because that totally wasn't her fault. Because if it was her fault, then that might be my fault. But you don't get civil liability just for dismissing someone who might have been responsible for an accident either. So it's weird.
But they are under civil suits right now.
Right,
So
but it doesn't automatically follow that because they didn't rehire her. That that's never mind.
No,
It may be an
I
insurance
thought that
issue.
was a wild. I thought that was a wild question. If you consider, because the one Alec Baldwin was like, yeah, he's there, yada yada yada. Technically, both of them could be there. Now Dave has already pled out, so no. It's like no, he broke it. He admitted it. We got fined. They could put it all on him. But Hannah and her. Side note, folks, I did learn from last week. We are simultaneously streaming on Rumble this time.
Nice.
It's not going to be a synchronized thing later, or it might, but I got to turn that off. And there's 167 people watching there. So if you guys like Rumble, please check it out. I'm happy to have whomever watching from wherever, and I deeply appreciate it. But one more thing about Baldwin, and then we can move on. I'm just interested in it because I have a lot of knowledge. I actually have knowledge of this case. The filming may be problematic anyway because they're having problems with crew. I do have a cinematographer who has tipped me off. And by the way, on this channel, I have shorts, and I did a short on this with the cinematographer, of course, in silhouette, whatever, expressing what's going on. All the crew people that are union are tipping each other off on social media saying, hey, stay away from Rust, and not only Rust, but stay away from Joel Souza. So that could be problematic too. And yeah, I know that technically actors or whatever, they'd be like, yeah, you're always going to be able to find an actor, always be able to find somebody. But when you're talking about a union deal with film crews and stuff, they're very, very tight and they have a lot of work. So that could lead into more problems for them.
I hope so. I have no sympathy for this production of Rust. What a disaster. It's going to go down. It'll probably go down as one of those like poltergeist legends. Like who knows who's going to die next, right? Or someone's going to choke on a sandwich or something like that. A buffalo's going to rampage through the set and like step on someone's unborn baby or whatever. something else has to go wrong with it.
But you know what, Nick? It's one of those sick things where I think if they actually get this project finished, people are going to watch it precisely because of this disaster.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And then it'll go down as like this cult classic, and people will have like Ouija parties or whatever around it. They'll invoke the dead person to come watch with them. Like, don't you wish you were there? Wouldn't you have done that shot better? That's what I would do.
Well, it worked for Crow, right?
Yeah, Crow is so different though, because Crow, I think if you know the circumstances of it though, Crow was an absolute freak accident by all accounts. I've said it before, but what happened on Crow was the dummy rounds. Dummy rounds technically had the primer removed or fired and a hole drilled in the side, usually the BB inside, and like the gunpowder drained. The primers, though, were not fired for the dummy rounds in the Crow, and they were using them for the shots, and there was just enough pressure between the chamber to hold back and the primer to knock the bullet into the barrel. So then when they needed the blanks, they put blanks into the weapon, and the blank hit the bullet that was stuck in the barrel, which then hit him. So go ahead and work the math out on that one, on the probabilities, and it's a lot less sloppy than the didn't pay attention here, didn't pay attention there. That one is genuinely freaky. But this is
his dying words were bleach bit.
Probably, or dad, I'm on my way, because his dad also had like a freak accident or claims.
That's the official story.
He had a critical reaction to Tylenol is what happened with Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee was murdered.
See, there you go. There's feelings. But this is a perfect segue. I'm going to solo Nick for this super chat because this is an important moment for him. All right. Good to see you, Nick. Usually on Replay Crew. Can I get a fat shame? 350 pounds. Just finished my day in the gym, and your unique encouragement would be appreciated. Go now.
Dude, look, just because someone walked around you and it took almost a year. I mean, you say 350 pounds. We know it was 350 days of that person trapped in orbit. That doesn't mean you went to the gym. That was someone else walking. They were trying to get away the entire time, but you just kept shoving donuts into your mouth. Man, I'm very glad you're pretending to go to the gym. If going to the gym means just laying in bed but clapping and sweating through it is probably the answer we can all expect. We know how it is on the internet. Like we all exaggerate a little bit. But what I need you to do, my friend, is exaggerate those arms and legs into some more ambulatory motions before the ambulance comes and has to hire 2 or 3 forklifts and a crane operator just to get you out of the house and into the ground where you probably belong. My God, man, get out of the early grave and get into a svelte shape and do the rest of the world a favor, my friend.
All right. Put that on a loop. Put that on a loop when you go to the gym. Be like Philly DeFranco.
Don't.
Well done.
Don't be like Philly DeFranco.
No. Supposedly, Philly DeFranco took and recorded everybody who commented about us being fat and chubby or whatever, recorded this into a loop, and he listens to it every time he goes to the gym to hate workout. So
well, if he needs any help, he can call me. I'll double the length of the loop for him.
Steve, I'm going to go to you on this one. You did a wrap up on the week, so tell us what's going on in the law, so we have the next subject.
Well, in list of ridiculous criminal cases, of course, Darrell Brooks had his restitution hearing yesterday. He's receiving potentially amendment violating punishment with these glasses he's having to wear. You probably remember those, Eric, from the Army, the BCGs, birth control glasses. So he looks even dumber.
I wish you wore them earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Yeah, he looks dumber than he normally does, but the judge gave him some more restitution. I kind of followed up on the Shabusiness case, the lady who dismembered her boyfriend after they had sex and then attacked her lawyer in court.
You can fix her, guys.
Yeah, so she got a new lawyer. She wants a new judge because this judge saw her attack the old lawyer, and she wants a new venue. So I don't think she's asking for too much here, really. Those were a couple of good ones. And the lady in Virginia whose son shot the teacher who fortunately didn't die. She was charged. People were saying, well, how come the Crumleys are charged, but Darrell Brooks' mother isn't, and this lady isn't? Well, she has been charged. So for case comparers, that happened. And then talked a little bit about the gag order at a Koberger, which people like to shake their head about a lot anytime anybody brings that case up from Idaho. That's it.
Have you heard about Koberger being investigated as a serial killer now?
Well, all I heard about that was that they said, well, yeah, we're going to look and see if there is anything that matches up. I'm not aware that there's anything to that at all that I've seen, other than, obviously, if you think he killed 4 people there, see if he killed anybody in your state. You would check that.
But
so.
a spree killing is different than a serial killing. I hate to get pedantic on killers, but it kind of is. A serial killer does them one at a time, but the sprees do them in one.
But I think the idea is, well, let's
day.
check and see if he did something in this state since he killed these people in that state. I haven't heard anything that's more to it than that. So I'm other than
how long between the murders do you need it to be to switch the difference? That's a good question. How long do you need? Does it need to be like a full day between, or is that a difference between a spree or?
I think it's a continuation of an event. I don't know how long it would be, but
it depends how much cocaine you do, Kurt.
Yeah, exactly. You have to. Let me see. You can't sleep in between. No, I have no idea, but I do know that they do classify them a little bit differently because serial killers generally spread them out a little bit more.
Spree sounds a lot more fun than serial. Serial.
It is
a little sweeter.
Or even mass killing. Spree sounds like when you're mass killing, you're angry, but when you're spree killing, you're enjoying it.
Right, yeah, it's like playing Unreal Tournament or whatever. It's killing spree.
Yes.
Grocery store.
You have Alex, or do you want some candy?
Well, it is a rather sour tasting candy. I agree. But and another thing, I'm not sure if there's a difference, but mass killings generally are in one place. Like what we've seen it, and as
are defined as 2 or more people killed in a similar circumstance within a certain radius, and I don't know what that is, but that's the way the
I think for it to be a mass killing, it has to be a statistic,
or there has to be one fat person involved.
Oh, wow!
It wasn't that there's an argument that was going on about you know how they always bring the statistic up, mass shootings are up X amount in the United States, but there was a question on, there was one where it's like a guy goes and tries to rob like a liquor store or something and shoots 3 people, and they were calling that a mass shooting,
right?
And they were like, well, hold on, that's a robbery that just went bad. That doesn't qualify as a mass shooting. So now it's kind of like, are all those quote unquote mass shootings actual mass shootings, or then what's the definition of a mass shooting? Now, I always thought a mass shooting was when someone is going to a particular spot and their goal is to kill as many people as possible, and we know that. But if you're going there to like a bank robbery and kill someone, that's not a mass shooting. So it seems like they've been putting everything under the umbrella of mass shooting to make the numbers go up.
Oh, of course.
That's like the exact point that I was trying to, much more eloquently.
Well, and not only that, but they do the same thing with child killings. If you look at the statistics, a child is like anybody up to 19 years old, depending on where you see it, and they go, well, wait a minute, whoa. You're putting all the gang statistics in there, so everybody's thinking that, a 4-year-old gets the gun that was out of the gun safe, but the reality is, no, we're talking about gangs, whatnot, and those numbers get padded. I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Oh, that's why why there are all these stats saying that like children, like the leading cause of death amongst children is guns, is because of the gang killing.
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
That's hilarious.
By far.
Yeah, the gang killings are a lot of it.
The whole purpose of that is the problem with mass shootings is there is no actually singularly accepted definition. The FBI defines it one way, NGOs defined it a different way, and anybody can really define it however they want to make the statistic they want. But it's exactly what Nate was saying, and it encapsulates or incorporates a ton of gang violence in there as well. Because when you think about either drive-by shootings or shootouts that involve multiple gang members, drug deals gone bad, which could have 3 or 4 people there, suddenly you've got a mass shooting that is just a result of otherwise criminal activity. And the purpose is to inflate the numbers, right? We've had 200 days of the year and 390 mass shootings. Like, well, why have I only heard about like 5 of them? Why is that a thing? But the other the problem with that is that it it defeats our ability to actually start tackling the reasons or causes behind this stuff, because we don't get accurate numbers and we don't get accurate research on triggering events. Like, and I would say even differences in what Nate was talking about, there's a big difference between someone who goes and shoots up a workplace and someone who goes and shoots up a school, unless the school happens to be their workplace. But you have different motivations, you have different reasons for doing it. You typically have different defendant profiles. Same with someone who goes and shoots up a church. Like, can we really categorize a racial motivated church shooting in the same way as we do like an Adam Lanza-esque Sandy Hook incident? They have completely different profiles and completely different reasons for doing what they do. And I hate that the propagandizing of mass shootings has caused us to lose the ability to start looking into the reasons behind them, to create defendant profiles, to start looking at all of them being on SSRIs. Oh, wait. No, that's all of them.
Maybe
that's literally all of them. Okay, never mind.
Maybe you just answered your own question.
I can't help noticing differences. I can't help noticing differences in the coverage. Difference in the coverage based on who's doing it and why, under what circumstances. Can't help noticing that some mass killings get more attention from the media than other mass killings.
It's the exact same thing we saw.
Stop noticing. Here's the Xanax.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying it's the exact same thing we saw in 2020, where like the flu disappeared and anyone who died in a car accident all had the same cause of death, which had nothing to do with cars.
Yeah.
So, it's all about inflating numbers to promote an agenda rather than trying to actually fix and address a problem, and and recognize where is it a problem, where is it not a problem, because it's just agenda driven. It's pretty sad.
Can I point something out? After the incident in Nashville, I didn't hear about gun control for a couple days. Normally, it's immediately on the spot. Holy cow, something happened in the school. Gun control. Oh. What? I didn't hear anything. Did you guys hear anything about gun control? Suddenly, the identity of the shooter was different, and gun control wasn't an issue.
Well, I didn't hear Dylan Mulvaney talk about it, so I didn't hear anything.
Well, let's not forget about the Tennessee 3, though. Isn't that all from what happened? Because they were trying to pass they went and protested the gun control legislation, and then the representatives got kicked out because they violated the quorum. So there was a conversation about gun control.
Yeah, but the media. I'm talking about mainstream media. I'm talking about the headlines splash.
Okay,
I was waiting. I mean, come on. Something happened. Where are my headlines? Where's my Twitter feed? I want to see all the calls for gun control. They were late.
No, well, the thing that I think, before you go, Nick, I want to ask the panel one thing. Have you guys seen the bombshell that's been going on the left with the whole trans thing? All right, so Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks comes out and she's like, don't call me a birthing person or a person with a vagina. I'm a woman. And now all the trans people are attacking her. It's like, you are a bigot because you're a transphobe. And then it's like, well, what is a woman? That question is transphobic. So they're like eating themselves alive about just the simplest question. What the hell's a woman? But, so it's insane because you have the women.
How is the question transphobic? Because the trans people are saying they are women, so they must be throwing themselves into a class. They must know so how is it transphobic to say what is the class definition?
You don't know how insane it's gotten. So if you're a trans woman, you're supposed to be defined as a woman. But now if you're a trans man, a biological woman who transferred over to a man, you are still a woman because you're a birthing person. So technically you're still a woman, even though you're supposed to be considered a man. It's insane. But it's the funny part about it is how they're eating themselves alive trying to figure it out.
I'm just so glad I made this prophetic drawing so long ago, where now we get Anna Kasparian yelling from the rooftop.
I know it's coming. Yeah, that's right.
What is a woman? What is a woman?
That was from our drinking stream. That was so fun.
And with that, gentlemen, I have to go find out what a woman is. I will see you all later. Thank you so much for having me on, Eric, and to the panel. I love you all, and we'll talk soon. Peace, guys.
Later, Dick.
Peace.
Take care.
But you know what?
Maybe one of us are women. How would we know?
I find it to be interesting because don't forget, there's the distinction between what I physically feel like a woman, but are you an actual woman biologically? And that distinction, and it's weird because I think that's the problem. you have women who have gone through things as a woman, who've been have been discriminated against because they're women, who now want to win sports, in women's categories.
Title IX.
Exactly. But now having to compete against men in sports is, and then being called a birthing person because it's offensive if you call yourself a woman and you're actually a woman. Like, I don't know if you guys ever saw when Adele, she got the gender free award and she's like, I love being a woman. And then they trashed her. They were like, oh, you're transphobic because you love being a woman. It's like the rules are now so complicated that now it's pushed everyone away.
Hold on. I don't know if Dana here is actually a trans woman or not, or is just quoting something, but I want to address this real quickly then. If a person is a trans woman, can they be woman of the month or woman
apparently
of the year? And that's part of the issue I think that many people have, is saying, I have no problem. Fine, you're a trans woman. Totally go for it. I have no problem with that whatsoever. That's a choice you made, as long as you're an adult doing it and you're not a kid on hormones. I've got another issue there. But when you start literally replacing another group, and I would say Dylan Mulvaney is literally woman face, it's very frustrating, I feel, to people who are looking on and trying to see objective reality.
Well, so I have an interesting sort of thought on this one, because it's remarkable to me that it took Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light to actually, for lack of a better term, and I don't like the term, wake people up from the lower class white right, being like, this is messed up. From my perspective, it went back to watching, I forget what I guess her name is, the MMA fighter. You're watching a man beat the hell out of a woman. And
Budweiser presents.
Sorry.
What the hell?
I'm sorry, that's just not okay. Like, it's not okay to me. I don't want to watch a guy beat the hell out of a woman, and I don't care what your ideology is. It's just there's something fundamentally that's not right.
Listen, dream come true, Emma. By the way, all right. Well, I guess I'm going to take a risk on demonetization immediately, and Nate's going to play a commercial that he cobbled.
A risk.
I think we're probably beyond that. So, folks, please consider that. Subscribe now. Help keep me alive, and be ready to protest on Twitter. Now, Nate is going to play a commercial for everyone.
Now, remember the Real Men of Genius commercial? So somebody put together a Real Men of Genius commercial and with Dylan Mulvaney. So
Real Men of Genius.
Watch it.
This is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, folks.
Real Men of Genius. Budweiser presents Real Men of Genius.
Real Men of Genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Really Bad Toupee Wearer.
Mr. Really Bad Toupee Wearer.
More than any neon sign or exploding scoreboard ever could, your chrome dome cover says, hey guys, look at me.
What could you be thinking?
You think it looks natural, but it couldn't look phonier if it had a chin strap.
Look at you.
Made of space-age fibers, it can repel anything. Rain, wind, snow, and especially young women.
I don't think so.
So crack open an ice cold Budweiser, Mr. Stud in a rug. Then crack open another for that thing on your head.
I don't think it's all straight.
That is genius. That is so good.
Again,
the chat is going. The chat is going crazy.
remember, subscribe now and keep me alive,
Oh
because we mean it in a fun way. I would hope even Dylan can laugh at that one. Good Lord.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I saw a different one of
You're
those.
going to be contacted by the Southern Poverty Law Center now.
I saw a different one of those, which was like basically, a mock-up of it. It's so much more brilliant using a real one and just throwing in the video. Oh my God, that was classic.
I'm not gonna have to do it, but you know what? Steven Crowder did a really good one on California, and that was yesterday's show. You can find that on YouTube, but so I'm not going to put it up. But yeah, there are some really good parodies going out there.
This is a little late. Sorry, error. Okay, I don't quite get the reference. Let me see. Washington Times.
I think that's a Team America World Police.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay, and this is definitely on point. Thank you, Mandalore-wise 01. I like that name. Oh my god. Okay, so yeah, moving on from the commercial. That's one of those. It's like, okay, am I going to survive this one? But it is hilarious. It's like, well, we should appreciate the humor, and to get a wise counsel to address it, I of course am going to turn to Steve. How are you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I suppose with the person you just showed there, that what I appreciate about that Dylan is, as John said, that's somebody who's been adopted by enough corporations and put into the mainstream enough that enough people are seeing it. And that guy is so over the top, mocking what it is to be a woman, jumping around and all the little effects and things of behaving like some kind of stereotypical woman, and the outfits like he's Jackie O or stuff, that it is so ridiculously over the top that people can see that and go, what the hell is this? This is ridiculous. I mean, that's my opinion of it, is this is absolutely ridiculous. Not for him to live the way he wants, wear the skirt if you want to, but to be treated as if we're supposed to believe he's female, that he's a woman, and then translate that to people dominating in women's sports that are obviously dudes and stuff. This coming from the crowd that told us for 2 years they believe the science while they walked around outside 100 yards away from other people with a mask on. I'm glad I'm a recluse. Like, I like living by myself out here in the woods and stuff, because this stuff to me is just like, where the hell is the real world at? How stupid can this species be? I don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It really irritates me.
Especially when you consider that if it was any other demographic but women, and someone decided to do trans this in such a carnivalesque type of way, where they're lampooning the very thing they're purportedly transforming into like the worst stereotypes. It's literally
woman face. It is woman face.
It is exactly. It's woman face, where running around in high heels in nature and shrieking when they see a bug, it's such an offensive reflection of women, that if instead of making a woman he put on blackface, that's what the classic blackface is. Not like Nick dressing up like Drex, but it's like, it's dressing up like that for the purpose of making fun of the demographic. If someone goes trans Asian and just starts talking, mispronouncing words in your stereotypical Asian accent and doing things like that, everyone would call that person out as the worst racist possible. And it's very interesting but when it comes to women, it's totally fine to just walk all over them and basically treat them as if they look, and anyone who calls them out for being a terrible person is all of a sudden some sort of evil phobe, racist, whatever. It's such an amazing thing. This is the worst offense against women that we've actually probably seen in the last 25 years.
Can I go one step further, Joe, real quick? Is look at how much lambasting fathers of girls dealing with this situation are getting. I mean, it goes one step further.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I'm two minds about it. I don't think there's just one overarching general principle you can come with this thing. There's one part of it, freedom, right? Call yourself what you want. If you want me to call you Mary and you look like whatever, I'll call you whatever you want me to call you, right? Because it doesn't bother me. But now there's a second part about it, about reality, right? Reality is, if you're in a car accident, and even though you're a trans woman and you're a biological male, that means something, right? The biology means something. We can't just ignore that.
It means you can no longer drive.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. But you understand. But you understand what I mean, though. It's there's a reality to it, and there's a social reality to it. And I think them trying to just say, like, right now they're trying to say, well, if I call myself a woman, I'm biologically a woman, and I think that's nonsense. I think you're biologically a man, but socially and I'll call you a woman. That doesn't matter to me, because you should be free to do whatever you want to do. And I think that's the part that's being missed here. Personally, you do whatever you want. That doesn't mean I have to like it, nor does that mean I want my kids to see it. But that means you have the freedom to do whatever you want. Does that make sense?
Freedom is also a social construct. Nature doesn't give two shits about your freedom. The tiger wants to eat you. All right. So like I don't think freedom really comes into this equation. You can't freedom your way out of natural realities. There is such a thing as a woman. This is a class of thing. It is defined this way. Your freedom cannot redefine the entire class, because, not for least of reasons, you can't redefine the entire class. We've asked. You can't do it. So if you can't do it, then like, what are we even talking about? This doesn't make any sense.
There was a great example to both of your points. Matt Walsh was, and you can like or dislike his politics, but he's pretty on point in this subject. He was asked at a college by a transgender EMT series of questions, and he responded, by the way, if somebody who is a trans woman, somebody who still has a male gonads, came to you and said, I'm in distress, I'm having a miscarriage, what would you do?
Right.
Send him to a doctor that would be called a psychiatrist?
It breaks the premise. And that's what I liked about the question.
Yeah.
Like there is a fundamental reality. Anyway.
Yeah, I listen. I agree with all that, but I do think socially is a difference than biologically. Socially, it's one thing. Biologically, you can't change that. There's no, and I think the delusion is trying to say, well, I'm actually this biologically. That's nonsense, right? That's nonsense. And unfortunately, it's like they want us to live in a delusion. That's what the Young Turks are going, right? Even they're saying, I said, that's a delusion. You're not actually a woman,
right?
But I'll call you a woman. I'll do this, but you're not actually a woman. And don't pretend that we're equal. That's what Anarchist Experience is saying. Don't pretend that we're equal because you are calling yourself a woman. Because
Did you see that?
I actually am a woman.
Did you see that clip where there was a woman who was talking at a college, and like some professor stood up from the audience and asked a question like an anthropologist? So this guy's got like a PhD who's asking the question, and the woman comes back and says, like, if you dug up a human being that was 100 years old, who had been buried and was 100 years old, would you be able to tell if it's a man or woman?
Yes.
The professor's like, yep. So and he says no. And everyone laughs. He's like, why are you laughing at me? I have a PhD. Like, I think it's part of the reason we're laughing.
Yeah,
like,
I'd laugh harder.
Yeah. It's like, if you can't tell,
then give
you're
back
an anthropologist PhD. We need to have,
Matter of fact, let's say 2,000 years from now, the earth is destroyed. There's nobody else alive. They go and they see graves, and this grave says man, and they dig it up, and it's trans. It's a trans. So it's a biological woman. Then they go to another grave that says woman, and they'll be like, it's all confusing. What do these labels mean? There's bodies. There's no way we can distinguish men or women. It's what says man. It's a woman. Right? You just won't know. You won't know. But obviously, there's a reason why, and I think that's the key point about like this whole sports thing too. Should we allow biological men to compete with biological women? And no. I just don't think that's possible. But now by saying that, does that make us transphobic?
No,
because that's what they're saying.
We'll have two categories: X, Y, and other. All right. So just that would be easy.
My favorite thing about this conversation is staring over at Steve there, reassessing his life choices that landed him in this conversation.
Well, what I am thinking is, this thing about sports, it gets attention because it's TV, and it's so ridiculous when you see a giant dude knocking somebody over in rugby or outrunning a woman. But it's like the tip of the iceberg. What I'm thinking about is around this state, North Carolina, and it probably is where you guys are too. The larger issue of how many kids are going through this, and the architecture that's been put in place through schools and the medical practices to support these kids, any confusion they have over their gender, either because they actually have it or the social dynamics or whatever, to have adults affirm that. beginning as they move into the medical system, and have a process to medically alter these kids as fast as they can get them into the system. And that steams me up a lot. Worse than adults competing against each other, which is also ridiculous, is how this is driven to the younger kids. Not to mention as well that this ridiculous anti-science kind of formula they've got is a great place for people who want to prey on kids. This is their home right now. This is their home. This is where they can violate these children.
That's where it's going, Steve. It's
I don't
about,
like it.
Sadly, the whole thing is headed right there. It's all about consent. And there are some particular predators who are very eager to give children consent. And that is the disturbing aspect of where this can head. Yes, I know slippery slope is a fallacy, except when you're sliding down the damn hill.
It's not a slippery slope when the slide is intentionally leading into that pool. That's not a slippery slope. That's an agenda where we're 2/3 of the way down the slide, and that's why we need to relentlessly just refer to OK groomer everything. Just stop it. I'm so tired of saying. I'll tell you right now. You'd show me a man who's alleged to be a trans woman. That's still a man. I'm sorry. It's just that's reality, and we can't. I'm tired of tiptoeing and dancing around this stuff. We need to call this stuff out because we're at a point now where we are 2/3 of the way down the slide. We know where the pool is. We know exactly. We know which pool this is heading into, and we need to keep calling this out as intentionally being grooming. And anyone who doesn't see it is either lying to you or too stupid to see that Wednesday comes after Tuesday. Like they're so blind as to how things are ultimately, inevitably leading that their opinion is really worthless.
And to draw it back a little bit to just the basic concepts of legal theory, slippery slope, yeah, fine, it's a fallacy. Everybody can go argue that. But you know what the best question a Supreme Court justice ever asks a litigant is, what is your limiting principle? Where does this stop?
You know what?
What is the basis by which you change?
You know what? I want to show you guys where this is allegedly supposed to go. This is from the Daily Show, and this is a trans activist explaining exactly why we're wrong. So she's gonna tell us why we are.
Okay, good.
Enlighten me,
please.
Here we go.
Of course, it's a new one. I was hoping for Jon Stewart.
Then, if not, then not. But then there are many
William.
who are not transphobes. There are many who are born biologically women who will say, "But you have an unnatural advantage over me." And that makes the sport unfair. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, there's lots of ways you can respond to that. So the first is the very language of you were born and I'm not biological somehow. Like I don't think I'm a cyborg.
Change the language.
So like this idea that like, oh, you're not a biological woman. Well, I am a woman. That's a fact. I am female.
No, it's not.
So all my
No, it's
identity
not.
records,
No, it's not.
my racing license, my medical records all say female, right? And I'm pretty sure I made a biological stop.
That's
so
what
I'm a
it's like
biological
business record
female
fraud.
as well. So this question of do trans women have an advantage over cis women? We don't know. In fact, there's basically no published research
Don't
on
know.
this question.
I'll help you out.
However, there's good reason to think that
Canada
there isn't.
powerlifting.
But I think it's irrelevant because we allow all kinds of competitive advantages within women's sport. So one example I love to talk about is the 2016
That's called
Rio Olympic
competition.
women's high jump final. First place was over 6'3", 10th place was 5'5". So a 10.5-inch height difference between first and 10th at the Olympics in high jump.
Right.
And we call that fair.
Okay.
So the range of body types within the female category is way, way bigger than anything that could be attributed to trans women. So
Are you
if
kidding?
There's an advantage, and I'm not saying that there is
She's almost
for
finished.
trans women in women's sport. It's not an unfair advantage. But also, we've been trying to compete at the high for decades. We've been allowed to compete for decades. And no one has won an elite world championship. No one has won an Olympic gold medal. This Tokyo Olympics was the first time trans women even qualified for the Olympics. So this idea that trans women are suddenly going to take over women's sport is an irrational fear of trans women, which is the dictionary definition of transphobia.
So
So there you heard
Dictionary.
it. Dictionary definition of transphobia.
There you go.
If you don't allow them to compete with women, biological women to compete with women, you're being transphobic. She said a lot.
Did you
there.
see? You need some Caesar salad there to cover to cover that word salad as to how he basically walked himself from being not just a woman but biological woman. I mean, this was
I am a biological woman
because I have biological parts to me, so that makes me a biological.
Okay, so hold on. If I take a stack of aluminum cans and pull them out of the garbage and put them in the pile, that's the same as a sports car engine.
I'm still
It's
back
identical.
I'm still back on the definitional question. I know it's tried and true, but on a very serious level, I want to know from their perspective, how do you know if you're a biological woman or a woman of any description? How would I know? How do I know? Seriously, how would I know? What is how do I know if I'm a man or a woman? How do I know?
This person said, "Hey, look at my ID."
Genetics.
So if my ID says it, that means it's true.
Look at my ID. Look at that, and I'm a biological. I'm not a cyborg, so that means biological woman.
Right, but here's the thing: is at the end of the day, basic,
crazy.
Literally high school level biology genetics gives you the answer, and we're done.
Yeah.
Someone says you feel like a woman. What does that mean? What does it mean to feel like a woman? What does that mean?
I have no idea.
How would I know? What does feeling like a woman mean? How do women feel?
They're headed into construct.
Because I'm not a woman.
What does it mean to feel like a man? What does it mean
know.
what does it mean to feel like a white person? What does it mean to feel like a black person? This is the stupidest thing in the world. I mean, I can't. I've already made my point on this. You can't cede any more ground on this. It's dumb and it's playing into their hands.
I think that's why you're getting a pushback with the Bud Light and everything, because they're like, how much more ground? You know, we got to the point where we can accept everything socially, but now when you're starting to change the objective facts of reality, that's where the line has to be drawn.
Although
that's where the pushback now is.
Although I will tell you, this is an interesting conversation because I fight against cancel culture, and there's a big call by many talking heads to quote unquote cancel Bud Light. Now, there are a lot of reasons to get rid of Bud Light, which have nothing to do with Dylan Mulvaney. I mean, it's because
I've been boycotting it for years.
Yeah, because because you might as well go straight to the source and just put a cup underneath a urinating horse and drink that. But I don't like the idea of people who are social media influencers calling for cancellations. I think cancel culture is wrong. I want everyone to stop drinking Bud Light. I just don't want us to be telling people you should be or making people feel guilty for not shunning.
Oh no, man! Light. This is the game. This is the game they've wanted to play on their side of the aisle, and I think reciprocity is now. So now we're just in a world we're all going to.
So then, at what point, if we take your tack, okay, I'm glad. Are you giving me pushback on this, Kurt? You're saying they did it, so now we have to play by their rules, right?
Yeah,
they drew first blood, baby.
Okay, and definitely cancel culture has been the domain of the left for quite some time now. At the same time, the reasons we have for objecting to it is because it's promoting a very unconstitutional type of perspective where it's like we don't want to give someone opportunity to express themselves, and if they bother to express themselves, the minority is going to try and silence. A relatively small number of people are going to try and silence that person from speaking because they're trying to deem it unpopular or more unpopular than it actually is. I want to see it fail organically, where I don't think there's anything wrong with people individually deciding I'm going to boycott this because I don't like what they stand for. I don't like their principles. I don't like what they're promoting. I don't like their messaging. I don't want anything to do with that. To me, that's capitalism. It's like you're investing your marketing in this sort of direction, and that failed. And I want them to fail abysmally. I want them to fall into a chasm that no one ever buys a Bud Light again. But if the way that comes is not organically, but by people such as you or I, or people who have far more significant voices than us, telling everyone to stop drinking Bud Light, that is basic. At a certain point, it becomes, how do you tell the difference between us and them? Because we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. I think there has to be more than that, where we actually believe in certain principles and act in accordance with those principles.
Well, the principle I believe in is logical coherence at a bare minimum. I mean, at least it completely fails all logical coherence. One of the things that, to me, makes law an interesting subject is that there's a logical coherence to it. It's like there's rules and chains of logic that make sense, and trying to figure things out in a way that's logical. And it's like you can logic your way through the problem, but with this principle, there's no logic to it, because it's like, I am X. I don't know what X is a logically untenable position.
Well, I do want to. I don't think we're talking about canceling Bud Light the against canceling, but I don't have a problem with Dylan Mulvaney being the person representing Bud Light or whatever. Like, I don't think, to me, that's not a problem, right? Because there has been other trans people who promoted products before in the past, right? There was no backlash. I think the backlash is because this was a message. In other words, they were trying to push a message instead of trying to push their product. I think you could have Dylan Mulvaney promote Bud Light and do it in a fun and interesting way that promotes the product, but this was promoting a lifestyle, and I think that's what people are pushing back on. Like, we're not for that. We'd be for the beer. Like, if they could have done something like the Real Woman of Genius, right? And then did the Dylan Mulvaney thing that was fun, that was something like this. I don't think you get that type of backlash. I think all the backlash that I'm seeing from the right is because they think they're trying to force a message on them and their kids and their lifestyle. And I think that's what people are pushing back on.
Hey, well, you know what? Let's get perspective from the person who actually came up with the campaign. And this is a very interesting, because this interview took place in March, before it all happened. So we can get an idea of, what was Alyssa Heinerscheid, the VP of Budweiser or Bud Light, thinking?
That a little bit. Yeah, I think number one, I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. And it was, this brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time.
Stupid.
And if we do not attract
terrible,
don't ever
say that.
To come and drink this brand, there will be no future
You're
for Bud Light.
idiot.
So
You
I
should
had
be
this
fired
super
before
clear
you
vision. We need to evolve and
Oh
elevate
my God. You never
this
say
incredibly iconic brand. And what I brought to that was a belief in, okay, what does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive and feels lighter and brighter and different and appeals to women and to men. And representation is at sort of the heart of evolution. You've got to see people who reflect you.
Appeals to women and men. I think
I'm pretty sure evolution has very little to do with representation, especially in a historical sense, when for pretty much all of evolution, we were more tribe-based.
Agree.
In the
representation was the antithesis of evolution.
Can we briefly just point out the fact that if you're a marketing executive, the last thing you want to say is your brand is in decline?
Yeah, that's
who did that? Hold on. You know who else did that? It was insane. Domino's. Remember when they said our pizza sauce sucks, so we've redone it, and I'm like, what? Because I'm friends with Christopher Lockhead, who's like a 3-time CMO in Silicon Valley, and one of his pet peeves are Pepsi saying, "Look, we're better than Coke." He's like, never ever say the other guy's name. It's the same principle. It's like, because if you say we're better than Coke, what does everybody think? Oh, Coke. That's the bigger one. It's the same thing there.
You're basically setting Coke as the yardstick and saying we claim to be better than that. It's the dumbest thing in the world.
The first thing that you learned in a marketing course is bandwagon effect. Obviously.
Yep.
This is the exact opposite of it. It is so I see it from a gaming perspective, but the second somebody says that, this MMO is declining, that's what happens, because you need an actual community to support the product. Yeah. So why the hell would you say that? Either you're really, really stupid, or I don't know how she got her position.
Well, you can see the language.
Last super chat. I would just comment about that last super chat.
Yeah, good.
So on a personal, what I believe, I agree with Miriam that bottom line ultimately is going to be decisive. because if they're not viable, they're not, because they've been boycotted by so many people. That's fine. I'm simply saying that if that boycott comes because people are saying you have to be tied to our ideology and stand up against this, otherwise you are not one of us, which is what the messaging of boycotters often are, that leads to demagoguery, where I'm on team Matt Walsh or Team Rekieta or whatever, or I'm on Team Cenk Uygur, whatever it is, that leads to demagoguery, which is never, ever healthy. It's never a good thing. That's why I say I want every one of you to never, ever again let Bud Light or any sort of Bud product cross your lips. And I don't want it to be because I'm telling you that. That's what my point is. So, and I understand, you're right, boycotting is very effective, and I hope every one of you boycotts it. I just don't want it to be because I'm telling you or anyone is telling you. I want to inform you as to this is what they're doing. Make your own decisions as to what you're going to do with that information. And my personal decisions, I'm having nothing to do with them because I think they're gross and disgusting, and they're basically just helping to deconstruct our society. But like you can do with that information what you want.
It sounds like
And
you're
by the
saying
way,
vote
that
with
was
your
probably
dollars.
the best anti-Bud Light commercial I've ever seen in my life.
Which one?
Oh yeah. I mean, this person is a piece of work for sure. We can listen a little more.
I mean, Bud Light had been kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor, and it was really
See what I'm
important.
talking about? She's pushing a message.
Another
She's not
approach.
pushing the brand. She's
Long story
pushing a
short,
message.
Super Bowl spot. Fast forward. I cast an incredible female choreographer who just brought incredibly positive, amazing energy to the spot. We cast Miles Teller and his wife Kelly Teller, but it was really crucial to me that if you see that spot, Kelly is the heartbeat of that spot. You're seeing this whole experience through Kelly. She's the beating heart. I would sort of
see this. Okay, this is the problem I have with it too. It's like, how about inappropriateness? Why not hire her for John Deere tractors? Why not? We'll just hire her and we're going to say, let's get Dylan on a tractor. That's going to sell great. It's completely...
Well, one thing about her is she's not keeping it secret in this interview about where she wants to take this.
Right.
And I assume that although they may want to pretend this, the people who hired her aren't shocked that this is her philosophy. I mean, she seems to have a way she wanted to go with this, and she went and was proceeding. And this Dylan thing was not the first thing she says she's done. This is a continuous process. So she's taking the flack. That's okay. But who were the people that were behind it who were like, well, let's get her in here. She's the way to take this brand. Well, they're not on interviews on YouTube putting that out there, but they're the people that make her possible. Some group of people hired her to do this.
What do you guys think about my perspective that it shouldn't be us telling people to do it, but that it should be organically? I'm curious about your take on that, because I think a lot of people, I feel like I'm in the minority.
I'm back with this is an affront to nature itself. It's evil and needs to be stopped.
But isn't
I think you vote with
an
your dollar.
arbitrary line though, Kurt? I mean, you decide that that's where the line is because they're changing facts. But isn't that in theory just that's what your perspective as to where the line is, but someone could legitimately have a different perspective as to where the line is, and then the line becomes so murky that there is no line at all.
Can I answer you, Joe?
Yeah, please. I want to hear from all of you.
So from my perspective, I actually think that you have a very good line. I think the idea is that we should not be telling you. Frankly, I don't think that politics or any of that aspect should be involved in marketing of readily available products. But yes, certainly it should be telling you why you should want this thing, as opposed to telling you you must have this thing, otherwise what?
How about show, don't tell? I get tired of that. Don't tell me.
Yeah.
Show me that this choice is better, and as I observe it, I'll say, well, okay. And if you are right, that may change my mind because I will be exposed to it. I'll see, maybe that's not what I think. But if you're jamming it down my throat and telling me the way to think, I'm initially going to, or automatically going to say, what? No. Hell no. But why won't you show it to me? Oh, Maybe because it doesn't match objective reality. Maybe you're busy saying things like it's all just a construct and everything's a construct. And to those, I encourage you to consider gravity. Can we test out and see if gravity is a construct?
Yeah. Step off the ledge of a building. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's a joke.
That's why I shaped it. Thank you, Joe, for whatever.
No, they're more than welcome. They're more than welcome to try
that was
it.
a joke. I'm not.
No,
they're.
I think
Anybody who wants to try is more than
certain
welcome.
physics laws. They're oppressive.
Yeah,
they're oppressive, and they should test out to see whether they're real or not.
I'm not advocating self-deletion.
By the way, I have some Rumble rants because I am streaming live on Rumble. So I wish I could bring them up to StreamYard. Rumble rather than worry about shorts. How about StreamYard integration, please?
That would be amazing. That'd be amazing, especially now that they have the super chat button in the StreamYard thing.
Well, yes, they've got a super chat column, and you know what? StreamYard is able to display Facebook and YouTube comments. Why can't Rumble? Hello. Anyway, next up, the Dragon's Treasure. You guys know of the TV show Naked Television. I think it was Australia. They have I guess trannies and general ugly people showing their goods to underage kids because education or something. I saw something about an educational program on the Daily Mail not long ago, and Nate and I might do an episode on this. I'm not sure, but it apparently was showing just normal adults or whatever to people who are 15 or 14 and up. And I don't know if I have a problem with that necessarily, because the only other exposure they get is porn. And I don't know if that's a realistic expectations. If it's handled in a manner of, hey, this is a human.
Health
Humans
education.
look like this. Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a terrible thing. Have to look into it more. Another Rumble rant from the Dragon's Treasure. You want to cancel your children's future and capability to reproduce. Stop trying to play nice. You don't need to use the One Ring, but at least swing your demand sword at the orcs looking to eat you. Okay.
That sounds very Lord of the Rings like.
And two more. This is about the person we were just watching. She's initiated into the left-wing cult. She's been brainwashed. This is why we lash out. And the second part, a fist fight is never healthy. But if someone punches me in the face, ellipses. So thank you for the rants. Agree, really, especially the last two. I'm not sure about the TV show. And like I said, I think Nate and I are going to do an episode on that because we can go deeper into how we think. What do you guys think about any of those?
I've never seen the TV show.
Never seen the show. I do want to do a little bit of a deeper when it comes to.
That's what she said.
Oh,
thanks, Joe. I want that.
What is a she? What do you mean by she?
Oh,
Thanks, Joe.
And now John no longer wants to come back on Fridays.
There it is.
John. Anytime that you'll invite me, I will come back. My bigger question when it comes to the marketing departments is, I think that marketing departments have separated so far from production departments that the people that actually make the stuff, and that's been their business the entire time.
The Clydesdales?
Yeah, nice one, Joe. Multi-layered too. I like that.
Well played. But the marketing departments, they've outsourced out to these recent college graduate millennials who have a very different idea of how business actually works. Usually it's you produce something, you convince a buyer to buy it, and you sell it to them. And you're like, no, but what if we entirely change this model? And those are the folks that are running these marketing departments. They're the folks that are running quite at very high levels this entire industry now. And it's not about production. distribution, and we're done, to, but what about all of these things? That I think that they fundamentally changed the corporate model.
I could get one worse
drive
on
me
you,
nuts.
John. One even worse than the marketing department, and that's the HR
HR?
department.
Yeah.
HR. I know I didn't want to go there because I know other.
Dude, I just came out of the corporate world, and the training is disturbing. Let's just say, mandatory training, and I'm like, where did this come from? I wonder.
Do you guys mind if I wanted to get everybody's opinion on one thing before we got out of here, because I know we're about to get out of here. So,
Yep.
But I wanted to ask you guys about this interview.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
yeah,
I watched that last night.
Oh
It
yeah.
was great.
I watched that
Here we
last
go.
night. You're at the right
I did
spot,
a short
right?
on it, by the way. I did a short on it on this channel. Please check it out.
Here we go.
This was great.
Do you see a rise in hate speech? I mean, just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
Personally, my for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you
But
see more
personally,
hate speech personally.
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful. What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm
Well,
saying.
I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly
Like
sexist,
swallow he has there.
that's
He's
hateful content.
I'm in
Does that mean
trouble,
that
man.
it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's
But
why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
You
don't.
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why, because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore, because I just don't
But
particularly
you
like
did.
it. You said a lot of people.
But you
like,
did.
Liar!
Well, hang on a second.
following-
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
Well, then how did you see the hateful
What
content?
about before that?
Because I've been
Fail.
using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen that you hateful content. I'm asking
Get
for
him.
one example.
Get him,
Right.
Elon.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
really.
Yes,
That's
because you
where I
can't
cut
give
it
a single
off.
example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you
you
claimed
know what?
the hateful content was high.
Well,
That's false.
no. What I
You
claimed,
just lied.
What? No. What I claimed was
You
there are
did.
many organizations that
not
say
what you
that,
said.
that kind of information
It's not what you
is
said.
on the rise. Now, whether it has on
Give
my
me
feed
one
or
example.
not, I mean, right, and
Literally
if you
can't
look at
name
something
one.
like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
Look,
I
because
know
people will
you're
say all
correct,
sorts of
and I think
nonsense.
you're
I'm literally
correct.
asking for a
Right.
single example, and you can't name one.
right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But let's,
then how would you know that
I
you-
don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said
No, it
you
is
were
getting
experiencing
somewhere.
more hateful
Yeah.
content,
It's getting a lot of
and then
places.
couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
That's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that
Proving
feed.
you're
Then how would you know
I've
this
few
hateful
weeks.
content?
Because
How would
I'm
he
saying
know?
That's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact
But
example.
name it.
Let's move on. We only have
Let's
a
move
certain
on
amount
because
of
I
time.
hate this topic.
They moved on. They moved
That's
on.
great.
And by the way,
Crushed.
them even
Crushed.
moving on gets worse.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gets worse than that?
Yeah, it does. He goes into COVID misinformation.
Yeah. Right after that. But
I don't
that's a
wanna-
it's a
I don't
YouTube
wanna-
no-no, so that's why.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
We've
right.
already got the sweep here on this episode.
He,
so I
Yeah,
pretty
but he
much
talks about how the
guarantee-
BBC. He talks about how the BBC has made mistakes. I'm
Yeah.
careful trust me, Eric. When it comes to this topic, I'm very careful because I personally have been burnt by YouTube 2 or 3 times on this already.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so that's why I don't even mention the word.
I overstepped my bounds.
Right?
Well, you know what?
No,
But
no,
you know
here,
what, that's-
let's put it
No,
this
no.
way. This
You're
is a
fine.
common thing. It's so common that I had this made.
You should change that to
Are you
weird.
kidding? My channel goes yellow literally the first 5 minutes of me speaking.
Because you're smoking.
Same.
Yeah.
No, because I don't actually, and I tested it.
All right. Well, I will tell you that smoking will do it very.
Smoking, yeah,
very
they get you
quickly.
killed.
My
Yeah,
face.
fine.
My face makes
It's because you're a disheveled homeless ginger.
Oh.
Damn
Wow.
it, Kurt. That's a really hard hit. No, but no, the point that I wanted to make on the case, in that particular, was notice how you actually cross-examine someone. Because this no longer was the interviewer's interview.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
He took
was
over the interview.
witness's interview. And he turned that on him so hard and so powerfully.
But
where
politely.
holding
He was
him to the
very
point,
polite.
and very politely. But he turned this into a cross-examination.
Yeah.
It was beautifully done.
Yeah.
And from a lawyer's perspective, and maybe you guys can talk to that, but it was so brilliantly done. It's one of the most powerful kind of turns on what's supposed to be an examination.
Yeah, it's the best since Jordan Peterson and Kathy Newman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was.
That was the other
The
one.
conversation is very uncomfortable.
But the thing about this particular thing was that guy was there to push a narrative, but he had no facts back. And when Elon pushed back on that narrative, it was like, oh, correct. He got caught. He got caught in the pushing the narrative instead of giving you the facts.
Well, I have seen
This
it.
is a great
I
super
don't
chat.
see it. Other people have said it, but I'm not speaking for Twitter.
This is a great
first
super
he said
chat, by the way.
I agree. This is a fantastic super chat. And I got a couple rants too that I've definitely got to get in.
Because it's true. If you're saying trans women are women, then why do you need more representation by trans women? You should be fine with representation by any woman. They're just like you.
Totally agree. Two more Rumble rants. I'm not saying anything. That one's right up there with. So what you're saying is yes, called straw manning, and then Andrew Breitbart was once famous for going to protesters asking what their grievance was and asking for one example. And Breitbart is brilliant. How many of you, not the news source now, I'm talking about the actual Andrew Breitbart, who not only created Breitbart, but created Huffington Post.
I didn't know that.
Have you read his book, Righteous Indignation? If you have not, I really encourage it. He's a fascinating guy and has a huge background. There's a lot of depth to him. Sadly, he died in 2011, I believe.
He's one of the few people in my life that I am deeply disappointed I won't have the opportunity to meet him.
Yeah, brilliant dude. But on that note, I know we've got a definite hard out, especially Nate's probably got kids. We've got everything else going on. Let me see. I'm going to go clockwise here, I think. Nate, what do we have coming up? What do you have going?
Nothing. Just Nate the lawyer. I'll put up a video and hopefully you guys check it out.
Awesome. John, what do you have going?
J. Robine Law. I am looking for the next law stream, but otherwise, my plan is to do legal education on copyright, trademark, and patent law. And Kurt, I'm happy to reach out to you because I know that's your milieu. But that's my plan for the next period of time, and then we'll go from there.
All right, Steve, what do you have coming up?
Nothing special, just the normal updates on trials I've been doing. But they're really good for sleeping.
Oh, come on now. No, seriously. Steve does a really good job. By the way, I think your Daryl Brooks coverage was definitely in the top 3. I really like the way you were covering the live stream and things like that. Insightful commentary, things like that. I definitely recommend people check out Southern Law. Kurt, what do you have going on?
Yeah, so in the mornings, I'm doing this morning stream, which seems to be doing pretty well. So I've done one the last 2 weeks, and people seem to be responding positively to that. And then I release clips from it as edited videos. So I released one about 30 minutes ago dealing with Jim Jordan, who is trying to hold hearings relating to the whole DA indictment of Trump. So just escalating things and some controversy relating to that. So we got some good stuff coming on, and you should check that out. So Uncivil Law.
All right, I'm going to pitch myself real quickly and then get to Joe. If you can, I'm really trying to grow this channel. I've been doing these panels every week on Friday. Look at the amazing group we have this week. We had an amazing group last week. I'm very blessed to have such great creators who come on, share their experience, their time, things like that. I know a lot of people hate them. This is terrible marketing, but I don't care. I am working diligently on creating shorts. Now, the good thing is that you can subscribe to this channel. If you hate shorts, well, they're in the shorts feed and you can ignore them like they never happened. But I encourage you to please watch them because every one is handcrafted to express a point or a principle or something of value. It's not just taking a clip by itself with nothing else there, unless it's a joke or a punchline, like a couple things from this episode may turn up. So please consider subscribing. I really, really appreciate it. And maybe check out the shorts feed. You might like it. Joe, I always like to give Joe the last word, obviously to, share his channel, what's going on, but people come here to hear wisdom from Joe. Joe always seems to come up with something that he can share of value, and his experience and his opinions are almost always very certain. So Joe, what do you have coming up?
Well, I am good Lawgic on locals, on YouTube, on Rumble. I plan on covering a lot more trials. I'm looking at the Alec Baldwin preliminary hearing and covering that on a day-to-day basis. And just to follow up on what I was saying yesterday, even more important than the whole point I was making about boycotting, like the most important thing I want you to take away from this is that we shouldn't be looking at our society as something that is going to that is something that we have the upper hand in trying to determine.